Jenny, what do you do as a member of leadership in your organization to actually promote cognitive diversity?
I love this question. I think it's really important to take some time to understand where the team is coming from. So that is at the leadership level, the people that we're working with on that kind of higher end, but also down to the line of business and really respecting and valuing what people bring and where we can also help them develop and grow. And that all leads through cognitive diversity. So pairing up team members who have differing, strengths. One's more analytical, one's a little more emotional or relational. And we pair them up on special projects, and so they can learn from each other. They can motivate each other to stretch into other areas of thinking and learn. So really, I think it bottles down to creating environments where people can learn from each other, identify their shortcomings, and have a place where they can be free to say, I'm not good at spreadsheets, I'm just not. But I'm open to learn, like help me learn, help me grow, partner them up, create, those kind of tiger teams, if you will. There's your corporate jargon, whatnot, but special operations team, something of that nature to help people tap into their skills and feel valued for what they bring and not beat down for maybe where they fall short.
I love that. And for my audience, I wanted to say this, that, the reason I had Jenny on the show is it's kind of a unique thing because I usually, like 95% of my reach out to people for the show is something I see on LinkedIn. I feel like the universe just makes that post appear in front of me. And I'm like, I have to have this person on the show. And you had posted something on LinkedIn about how you took a break for a while and like you came back and you'd been working on the team and kind of understanding personality type and just really digging deep into like, how can we make my new position as a customer success manager, I believe, how can I make this team more cohesive? So it's interesting how you're looking at it like that. And what kind of success have you seen? I mean, do you think that this like taking personality into account has been beneficial? Like you are putting these special teams together based on the strengths and weaknesses of people?
Tremendously.
Okay.
Tremendously. So coming into the role, the first thing I did was a retro. Right. So what's worked well, what's not worked well, what have you hated, what have you loved, what have you seen, and what do you really look for in a leader? Right? What type of leadership style best suits your needs as an employee? We just had that first week on the job. Like, let's just dig in, be candid. Like we have no judgments here, no expectations set. Like this is my time to learn from each of you. And then through that process, you can hear those more real logical thinkers that are very pragmatic and practical in their approaches. Then you can hear those that started to open up and they're like, this has been terrible and it just made me feel, and I can tap into the more, empathetic and emotional side. And so really leveraging that insight into what personality types do I have here? What's going to pair well together? Where am I going to have those watch outs? What am I going to have to coach up from a leadership role? It's been instrumental. And since then, when we have specific customer situations, right? So where I can see somebody on the team going in with that really practical approach, and this customer is coming from a more emotional perspective, I can partner them. So I'll say, hey, why don't you go pair up with, Molly, for example, and I know she's going to bring that empathetic side to that relationship, differing perspectives, that thought leadership, that diverseness that really everybody benefits from.
So as a leader yourself, I mean, as you know, I'm very into the Myers-Briggs type indicator. This conversation necessarily isn't about that, but, we all have our preferences where it's like, naturally I drift towards this. So as a leader yourself, would you say you're more on the pragmatic bottom line, or would you say you're more empathetic, emotional, or feeling oriented?
Definitely empathetic, emotional.
Okay.
To the point where I have to watch out for saying I feel, right? Like it feels like I feel. So we'll be in, leadership meetings, and it feels like, or my team's saying, and it's like, okay, what does the data say? What's the facts, right? I mean, I'm sitting in there with my CEO. He wants the bottom line facts, and I'm here defending people because that's also very important to me as a leader, my people. So it shows up every day. It's something I have to work at. Right, that other side of not having a preference in that, factual, data-driven, mindset. I have to create space and awareness to go there. So if I'm working on budgets or things like that, like gotta have the right playlist on, gotta be in the zone, right? Like maybe like take my home office to the beach for the day, or like literally though, I have to
Okay.
create the environment for my brain to go and think from, those places where it's just not part of who I am.
When people say the word I feel, sometimes I actually think, because I'm a thinking type in the MBTI model, but when I say I feel, I'm really talking about my intuition is telling me, not my emotions. Like I feel like this is actually me saying I'm intuiting this. So some people can misinterpret my internal dialogue saying I feel, then like this is an emotional response.
Yeah. And I think it's just like how it's communicated. I mean, intuition can be about those kind of big ideas,
Hmm.
like, hey, I feel like, and you're thinking that future, right?
Yeah.
Like thinking more strategic or long term. And then there's I feel the empathetic side, the intuition about people. And, I think it's just being cautious about how that's communicated and how it's conveyed. But I totally agree with you. I
Okay.
can see it. I can see it both sides.
Now you mentioned something about corporate speak or corporate jargon, and you talk about how to convey, certain things and come across as empathetic and in the right setting, saying the right thing. So like, you came into this role with the expectation that you were going to like shake things up, not in a like ruffle feathers, but just like let's do things a little bit differently. So, one of the things that I always harp against is like corporate speak or corporate polish. Things come across as
Mm-hmm.
like a PR generated lawyer statement, which is like, are there any real words being said here? So like, how do you go about removing that corporate speak and talking to people? We're meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, that's it. It's a hard thing, right? Just because we're surrounded by it, and
Mm-hmm.
and I love like the evolution of some of those influencers that are like challenging the corporate jargon space.
Yeah.
So I think we could share those later, but
Mm-hmm.
like hey, instead of circle back, why don't we square back? Some of those fun things to just like bring light to it.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a CEO who got to Harvard for his MBA. I mean he's affluent,
Right.
formally educated, like
Yeah.
very, very brilliantly smart person. And so we'll be sitting in meetings and it's, words like rigor and, we're gonna table that for next week and all of this. I
Offline.
mean, yeah, we're gonna take that offline or all of those fun things. And they become part of the vernacular just by osmosis, right?
Yeah.
So even me, like I did a stint in marketing, right? And so I'm doing this formal corporate language and I got out of marketing to be honest because I felt like it was creative lying, right? It's these fancy words that
Mm-hmm.
convey this, whatever it is, conviction or emotion, and they weren't real. And I think that's like corporate jargon, right? Do we want to sound fancy and important? We do. I mean, everybody wants to be valued and sound like they know what they're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what? At the end of the day, nobody does. We're all just trying our best,
Mm-hmm.
right? We fail forward, we learn. Is that a corporate jargon one? Fail forward? Not yet.
I don't
Getting
know.
close.
I'm
But
probably going to start seeing it everywhere now, but I
you
haven't.
know, I'm
It's a good phrase.
yeah, I'm lucky in this space where a lot of my leadership team is homegrown, right?
Okay.
As in they don't necessarily have formal college education. They didn't come from, these elaborate Silicon Valley tech companies.
Yeah.
They were gritty. They worked really hard. They're very smart people, very passionate about what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty of it is they are 100% anti-corporate jargon, right?
Okay.
Like it's like, God, if they say that word one more time, I'm going to go crazy. And so we can make light of it. We can work on changing it. Again, sometimes we play around. We're going to square back. We're not circling back today, y'all. We're going to square back.
Yeah, let's
Um,
octagon back on this. It's like, wow, that's it.
yeah. Well, and I
Never heard of
think
that
that
shake.
like kind of talking back to the top of our conversation is that thought leadership, right? Like how can I convey what I'm trying to say without just being another robot spitting some corporate jargon?
Mm-hmm.
And I make up words. I own it. I'm like, that's not a word, but it is today. You do know what I mean, right? And they're like, yeah, I got you. I'm like, okay. I have a member of my team who is very detailed, pragmatic, logical, and it was almost abrasive. I hired him, but I was kind of like, what is this? And then I realized like we just have such differing perspectives
Mm-hmm.
and we come from very different places. So in our weekly team meetings, I have to make sure what you just said. I can't just, hey, does that sound good? We're gonna go after it this week. We're gonna go hard and we're just gonna crush it.
Crush it. Great.
What is crush it? Crush it is subjective. It means nothing. Crush
Yeah.
it could mean like, give me a paper bag and I'm gonna crush it. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I know, that this individual, he's like, what is my metric? What is your expectation?
Mm-hmm.
Give me like the details of exactly what you want me to do. Crush it does not work for him.
There are, our personalities always, our egos protect us from noticing things about ourselves that can be like our blind spots. We call it the blind spot or the shadow type of personality, where we don't want to notice things that may hinder us or be like a weakness we have. So we kind of blame the external world or other things for why we do things wrong. But I want to know, like, your personality type, I'm sure you're familiar with who you are. Can you talk about some of the things that may have hindered you along the way in your career or interpersonal life, that like is part of your personality that you need to work on? Like, and if you've identified those things, what have you done to kind of do better at them? So what would be a weakness that's like, I really had to work on this?
Um, Sharing. So oversharing,
Oversharing.
right? Like I love to collaborate and talk, and I do need to talk things out a lot. So I'll look for partners to be like, hey, I have an idea, or like, what do you think about this? Like I bring others in, and sometimes as I've grown and evolved in my career, it's like you can't overshare, right? There are some things that are sensitive or just don't need to be shared. I challenge that sometimes, right? I'm a very transparent leader. My team knows what I'm presenting to the board, right? They know. There's no reason for them to not be involved. They're doing a lot of the day-to-day work. But I've had situations in my career where they're like, hey, you have to stop talking to other people so much.
Okay.
Okay. And they're right. I mean, there's a line where it's like, this is productive sharing, and then there's just, that's your personality. You're very outgoing. You want to talk and bring other people in, and sometimes you have to know when that's not okay. And so I have to work at it. I took offense to it at first, right? So when I
Yeah.
first kind of had that conversation with a previous VP, I was like, really? Like, okay, like that's, I looked at it as I'm a trusted person, right?
Okay.
Like people trust to talk to me about things, and they trust that I'll be honest with them. And I came about it as that's a good thing, right? Because it's that relational, like I'm able to build connections to where we
Yes.
feel like we're in a safe space to communicate. And sometimes it backfires, and that's just corporate America, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't our, can we have a you, me, and the fence post conversation doesn't always stay that way, right? And so that's when I really started to think through, like, does this need to involve somebody who's really not directly involved in the project or whatever we're working towards? What is the implications of them not being involved? What is the potential risk of them being involved? Do I share it? Do I not? And I have to stop and think a lot, because
Okay.
I talk fast and I have a lot of thoughts, and my brain moves a million miles a minute. And sometimes it's like, just breathe, think, don't talk. The power of the pause, right? So
Do you know what you are on the Myers-Briggs type indicator? Are you an ENFJ or ENFP? What did we decide?
I was an ENFP, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I've pegged you as a natural brainstormer. I mean, you kind of said it, like you have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ideas. Your brain's moving at a million miles per hour, but just you also mentioned like deadlines and getting things done. And a lot of people would stereotype the ENFP as not being able to get anything done, but that's just because they kind of have like a very, they look at the meme of the type, but ENFPs, when they're motivated for especially for a cause, that's like really have to like, or like a goal, a mission,
Yes.
they can act like the executive type. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But you could probably attest to this. If you're not bought in to the mission or to the team, then it can seem like I don't really want to do that anymore because I'm internally not motivated. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes. Yes. I can speak to that a lot. I think it's that having that buy-in from both the thought perspective, as in like I'm contributing to the greater picture or the greater goal or the future state, gets me pumped. And
Yeah.
I will sit there and I will write frameworks and think about, like, even down to the level of like how I can optimize my talent, and how I can pull in key players based on where they thrive. And really, I'm just like all in it. Conversely, if I think it's a bad idea, or it's vague or just ambiguous in how it impacts me or my team, or like the future state of where we're going as a company, it's going to sit on that low priority list. And if it's somebody else's high priority, it's a low priority to me.
Okay.
And so definitely, I think I always have probably 15 projects going. a wonderful person, Mike Jaffe, taught me one time. He called me out. He said, there's no such thing as multitasking. I'm like, well, sure there is. I'm an expert multitasker. He's like, no, you can't multitask. You cannot actually give your brain's attention to multiple things at once.
Okay.
Something will be compromised.
Mm-hmm.
And I say all of this in that same type of conversation, right? Like, I love to get things done, but I have to be bought in.
Right.
I can do multiple things at once if I'm really passionate and excited about it, but if I'm not.
Yeah, and you speak to the other types that exist, which are like, they don't have to be bought in to complete it, because completion is the goal. Like, even if I hate what I'm doing, so that it is like, you start to see type is actually a real thing when you're like, some people need to be bought in, or some people don't even need to care what it is. They can just do it because they prioritize checking things off their list. Whereas you kind of just alluded to, I can have 15 projects going in various stages of being completed, but that doesn't bother me.
Yeah. And I don't think it, like, for me, it doesn't go in like a linear checklist style. So if
No.
I were to show you my daily notebook, it's the same list every day, but it changes orders, and then they create, new paths as they go. And so something that was at the bottom of my list pending a conversation, or me hearing something that's like, oh, I'm already kind of sort of working on that. I'm going to bump it to the priority list. Now I have these ideas and I'm really excited again and I'm bought in. It's going to the top.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really all I had for you today. It's so funny just how these connections exist. Like, I don't think, honestly, I'd ever seen that. I can remember a post from you before I saw your post, and I was like, I got to talk to her. So it's just like interesting how that gets prioritized in my feed. And then I'm like, yep, I got to reach out. So like, I guess what I'm saying to the general audience is like, I reach out to people that have things to say, not have to say something. That's a like famous Lincoln quote or whatever, but it's like, I always prioritize people that I want to bring on who have something dynamic to say. So thank you for being here. Is there anything else you wanted to let my audience know?
No, thanks for having me. It's been fun. I love the just crazy way that we aligned. LinkedIn's a big space. It's becoming a loud space as people find their personal brands. And, I don't post that often. So I just think it's really cool that, like, the one time I kind of did get back on there, I took that break, was the moment that you happened to see it. And this has been really fun getting to know you, hearing kind of the similarities and differences of, that thought leadership and that cognitive diversity perspective. So it's been awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.